Welcome back to another episode of my little Japanese language learning series. Today, I think it would be beneficial if we covered the next three topics that the Nihongo Challenge book covers. Namely, the three topics. We have a conjunctive marker, another verb ending that we're going to be introducing, and then really a sentence formation here at the end. The first topic that we have is nagara. Now, nagara is a grammar term that we use to express two simultaneous events happening. Well, it's redundant to say at the same time, but it's also 2 in the morning, so I'm going to be a little bit redundant. When we're talking about two events and we wish to express that these two events are happening simultaneously, we use nagara. So, for instance, this first sentence in English is, while I am consulting a dictionary, I read a book, right? So, 辞書を引きながら、辞書 dictionary を引きながら from the verb 引く, which in this case means to consult. This is kind of, once again, a multi-tool word. You can use hiku for some other things. So like you can use it for like to pull something like your drawers or your shelves. I don't remember that word off the top of my head. But that's just another example of the word hiku to be used. So that's one example. Or while I was watching TV, I ate food, or I ate dinner, right? テレビを見ながら晩ご飯を食べました, right? We're indicating that while one event was happening, the other one was happening too. Another good example sentence. I clean my house while I listen to music. 音楽を聴きながら自分の家を片付けます or アパートを片付けます I clean up my apartment, I clean up my house. 片付ける is the verb for to clean up or to tidy up. Another way that we can actually get a construction out of nagara, this is from Tofugu on their article on the nagara construction. And their example sentence is 今度話しましょう食べながら Sometimes it's handy to append like a verb nagara at the end of your sentence when you just like, oh, forget, like, oh, let's do this thing while we're also doing this thing too, right? So, oh, let's talk about now. Let's have a conversation right now. Or this time, let's have a conversation while we're eating. But appending it at the end here instead of making it a conjunction in the middle of the sentence, basically just puts emphasis on the fact, like, I want to do this too as well, right? So, that's another use of nagara. The second topic, that's really all there is for this one. There's not much to be said for nagara. It's not really used very much conversationally, and sometimes it's really more reserved for just writing. So you might not see something in manga, for example, when characters are talking. You're not going to hear nagara, or read nagara, rather, very much. I know that because I just sat down. I wanted to pull a line from Beastars because I have the manga here, and I just want to connect it to like something that is, you know, in the cultural zeitgeist or lingering in the cultural zeitgeist. But lo and behold, I couldn't find anything with nagara because nagara typically isn't used in conversation. It's more typical to use a different construction that we can get to later. But that one's, I think it's the dara or nara constructions get used a lot more than the nagara constructions as well. More of an if-then statement rather than strictly while, or dara means when, but that's for another video. The second construction is the tai and takunai construction, and also sometimes you can add ndes at the end of it. Now, tai and takunai indicate whether or not I want to do a particular action. Now, to make a verb in the tai form, you consult whether or not it's an u verb or a ru verb, and then you conjugate that stem accordingly into the i sounding character for that verb, and then you append either tai or takunai at the end of it. So for this example sentence, this is also another thing of note. Matcha ga nomitai desu. So, I want to drink matcha. Now, whenever you put something into a tai or takunai form, what you're doing is you're essentially changing the verb itself into an adjective. An adjective in Japanese, you cannot use a direct object marker. So instead of using matcha o nomitai, we use matcha ga nomitai. That's the more typical construction. I think I may have read some instances where you can use a direct object marker, but I can't think of any off the top of my head at the moment. Salvatome might have some, and if there are, I'll remember to include that in the video itself as well, in the description or in a comment below, discussing those particular examples and distinguishing between the two. Another example of using this form in the negative sense. Yuki no hi ni shigoto ni wa ikitaku nai yo. On snowy days, I don't want to go to work, right? I mean, obviously, you don't want to have a car accident. So, what do we do here? This one is taken. This is a modified one from the Nihongo Charenji. I changed a few words here and added some. So, yuki no hi, snowy days, or yuki no hi ni, on snowy days. Shigoto ni wa, to work, and I use the negation particle wa for shigoto ni. I don't know if I'm really wrong in saying it's a negation particle, but we're using it to negate shigoto. Ikitaku nai yo. Now this one's because ikitaku nai is, I think that counts as an intransitive verb if I recall correctly. We don't have to append ga here necessarily. Instead we use ni and wa because also because iku implies directionality, so it's more fitting to use ni. But if we wanted to use like I don't want to drink matcha or I don't want to drink something, we say nan nado ga nomitaku nai instead, just for reference. But for this case, directionality, so we use ni. So yeah, yuki no hi ni shigoto ni wa ikitaku nai. Iku becomes ikitaku nai, appended. And then yo at the end there is just like an exclamation. It's like an exclamation sort of particle. It's to really emphasize the fact that I don't want to go. I just really don't want to go. It's like a verbal exclamation mark. Yeah. And then lastly, the last topic that gets covered on this particular portion of the Nihongo Charenji textbook is koto ga aru. Now, koto ga aru means sometimes or occasionally. So like sometimes this thing happens, or sometimes I will go do this thing, so on and so forth. So for instance, how you make it is that you just append the phrase koto ga aru, and this has to be in the non-past tense, mind you, for this particular meaning to get across. You just append it to the end of the dictionary form of the verb that does the main action of the sentence. So in this sentence, tokidoki, sometimes, watashi no saifu o wasureru koto ga arimasu. So tokidoki, sometimes, my wallet, watashi no saifu o, so wasureru, to forget. So if I could say, it's a little bit redundant to say tokidoki wasureru koto ga arimasu. It's redundant in English to say sometimes and sometimes. Japanese is the weird exception to this, or really no, English is the exception in the sense that we don't use double negatives. Most other languages do use double negatives. Japanese is one of those languages that does use double negatives. So that to the English brain, upon first viewing, might seem a little bit trippy. But anyway, wasureru actually just modifies this whole phrase. But koto ga aru literally means there are things, right? So, watashi no zaifu wo wasureru koto is a noun, right? This whole thing modifies koto. And it expresses the existence of this particular concept or object, really. Right? So there is an object where I just forget my wallet. There's a thing out there specifically whenever I am doing things and I just forget my wallet. So tokidoki watashi no zaifu wo wasureru koto ga arimasu. There are times that exist when this happens. Or sometimes I forget to do my wallet, or I forget to get my laundry, or so on and so forth. Another example, you can use this to express an event that occasionally transpires, but not always happens. So this one's straight from Nihongo Charenji, actually, because I thought it was a really good example sentence. Because it had a couple of good words in there. I actually botched it a little bit because I'm tired. This is not even furimasu. It's a B. Gosh. I'm just going to leave it in the dictionary form. I don't care right now. So, Brazil no takai yama ni wa, in the tall mountains of Brazil, yuki ga furu koto ga aru. It occasionally snows. So, yuki ga furu, I know my penmanship is not exactly great right now. Yuki ga furu means to snow. So, literally, it means the snow is falling. So, if it's raining outside, we say it is raining. In Japanese, you say the rain falls. So, ame ga furu. It suddenly started to rain. Ame ga furidashita. Right? So, there are times that it does rain. Ame ga furu koto, oh my gosh. Ame ga furu koto ga aru. So, there are times that it snows. Yuki ga furu koto ga aru. Right? So, all together once again. Brazil no takai yama ni wa yuki ga furu koto ga aru. In the tall mountains of Brazil, it occasionally snows. So yeah, all in all, we've got three topics here. Nagara, which is able to express two simultaneous events. It's a conjunction, and we typically reserve it for literary use. Tai takunai, and we use that to express want or to not want something. Also, one last note, ndes, at the end of it, we use the copula marker just to, end the sentence typically with an adjective, but the emphasis is a slightly more interesting form where it's like providing like it is the case that I want this sort of thing, so you're just basically giving it a little bit extra emphasis. Long story short. And then last but not least, koto ga aru, which we will use to express things that sometimes happen or occasionally happen. And they're usually outside of the control of the person doing some sort of object, or it's some sort of observation that someone is making about something going on. And that's today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to see more of this sort of content in the future, let me know. それから